Okay, picture this. It's, 11 p.m. on a Sunday, and you're lying in bed doing the exact thing you swore you wouldn't do. You're doom scrolling. And suddenly, right there on your feed, it hits you. Somebody you went to high school with is standing in this pristine infinity pool that seems to just melt into the ocean in Tulum or Tuscany. It's perfectly lit, and of course, it's captioned with something like, "We only get one life." Your thumb stops. You feel that little tightness in your chest, and before you've even fully processed what you're doing, you've opened up a travel app, picked some dates, and felt that incredibly powerful, almost cinematic urge to just escape. Well, let's dive right into this explainer, because today we are looking at the vacation trap. We're going to expose the hidden financial devastation behind the travel industry's highly marketed version of self-care. The stuff nobody actually wants to talk about.
Now, what's really fascinating here is the stark contrast between the visual performance of an expensive trip and the crushing reality happening behind the scenes. We have been completely culturally conditioned to believe that the person in that sunset photo is living a vastly better life than we are. But here's the secret nobody ever discusses out loud. There is a massive chance that the person in that photo is dramatically more broke than you are. Seriously, they didn't actually pay for that pool. A payment plan did. That trip they are calling priceless online, yeah, that's going to show up on their credit card statement for the next 11 months, accumulating at a brutal 22% interest rate. They literally carried $8,400 in credit card debt home right alongside their luggage. So how exactly does this happen? Why do we see normally smart, super financially disciplined people completely bypass their usual budgets? Well, one clinical psychologist completely hit the nail on the head. They said on vacation, money starts to feel like monopoly money. Think about it for a second. We have placed travel into this completely protected psychological bucket. At home, you'd agonize over a $9 monthly streaming subscription, right? Or you'd feel totally ridiculous financing a $4,000 couch you couldn't afford. But a $4,000 to $6,000 trip? Suddenly the justification kicks into overdrive. We earned it. It's self-care. We're collecting memories, not things. The travel industry essentially took the very real science that experiences bring more happiness than things, and they weaponized it to switch off the part of your brain that does basic math. Which brings us to what are, literally, the four most dangerous words in personal finance. We're already here. This four-word phrase is the exact psychological mechanism that turns a reasonably priced getaway into an absolute avalanche of overpriced excursions and $40 cocktails. Look, when you're at home, spending $6,200 in discretionary income would take months. You would feel the friction, you choose the cheaper option every once in a while, but a vacation compresses all of that spending into just 7 days. Your mental threshold is completely suspended. An upgraded room is $80 more per night? Fine, we're already here. That food tour is $200 a person? We're already here. Every single line item clears the hurdle because your normal financial judgment has been temporarily muted. And the real-world consequences of this suspended reality, they are genuinely staggering. I mean, a shocking 13% of Americans actually admit they dip into their retirement savings just to fund a vacation. I want you to really let that sink in for a second. More than 1 in 8 people reached into the exact account that is supposed to keep them secure and eating decent meals at age 75, completely sabotaging their future compounding growth, all for a temporary escape to the beach. That right there, that is the literal definition of a trap. Let's ground this in a totally realistic everyday scenario. Take a standard couples trip down to Tulum or maybe somewhere in Mexico, which usually clocks in at around $6,200 on the receipt. We're talking about a couple with good jobs, a 401k, a solid combined income. They book the flights, the nice resort, the dinners out, maybe a catamaran day trip. But they didn't have $6,200 just sitting in cash, so they put it on a card. And the huge problem here is that they are the rule, not the exception. The data shows us that 74% of people who put a summer trip on a credit card do not pay it off right away. Over a third haven't paid it off a full year later. They are literally booking this year's trip while still aggressively paying off last year's. We almost never run the actual math on vacations, mostly because it just feels so unromantic. But the opportunity cost here is absolutely massive. Your week in the sun isn't just costing you that initial $6,000. If you took that exact same money, invested it in a standard index fund at an 8% average return, and just left it alone for 30 years, it grows to over $62,000. So the crucial takeaway is you aren't making a $6,000 decision. You're making a $60,000 decision charged directly to the older, much more tired version of you who's going to need that money a whole lot more than you needed to swim up bar today. So why is it that these trips always, and I mean always, cost way more than we originally planned? Well, that initial booking screen is just a doorway. The actual vacation is a massive iceberg of hidden costs. You've got these unregulated resort fees quietly adding 33 to 50 bucks a night for a pool you naturally assumed was included. You've got all-inclusive resorts where the good restaurant or premium drinks somehow cost extra. But honestly, the absolute biggest budget killer is that last point, the post-vacation recovery week. You finally get home, the fridge is totally empty, you're exhausted, so you just order takeout. You miss some work hours, maybe you forgot a bill was due. Suddenly, just returning to your normal life adds another few $100s of stress that you completely 100% failed to budget for. And to make matters even worse, the travel industry has rolled out a brand new flavor of this trap. Buy now, pay later. When companies embed those super-friendly pay in 4 buttons right there at checkout, at the exact emotional peak when you can literally already taste the pina colada, you aren't getting responsible financial flexibility. No way. You are buying a timeshare of regret. You're taking a 1-week fleeting experience and turning it into a highly stressful subscription that you'll still be paying off while your tan has completely faded and you're back answering annoying emails at your desk. Because the actual data absolutely proves this trap is by design. When you offer people payment plans right at the peak of their excitement, it causes them to spend wildly more than they would if they had to actually feel the friction of the full price up front. A firm has actually bragged to merchants that travelers using their plans spend an average of 48% more. Uplift sees a 22% increase. Guys, that is not a feature designed to help you out. That is a flat-out confession. The whole point of that friendly little button is to extract money from you that you otherwise never would have spent. Now I know exactly what some of you are thinking right now. But wait, I use travel rewards cards. I'm gaming the system. Well, the hard truth is, even those travel reward cards are heavily engineered by psychologists to act as a financial accelerant. They completely reframe your spending as earning. You tell yourself you aren't spending $1,200, you're earning 40,000 points. But research consistently shows that cardholders spend nearly 20% more on travel specifically than households without those cards. It extracts more of your hard-earned money by disguising itself as a smart consumer hack. Listen, the points don't build wealth. They just build a future obligation to spend even more on your next trip. All right, let's actually look at the science for a second, because this is the part that might genuinely make you a little angry. If wildly expensive vacations made us proportionally happier, then sure, you could maybe defend the math. But they don't. It's a psychological phenomenon called the fade-out effect. Research tracking over 1,500 people showed that the happiness boost you get from a vacation mostly comes from the anticipation before you even leave. Once you return, that boost fades back to baseline within a few days to a month. And here's the kicker. It fades regardless of price. A $12,000 luxury overwater bungalow and a $1,200 local cabin produce the exact same fading happiness effect. The industry has basically been charging you a massive premium for a level of happiness that the data proves simply does not exist. So, the big question. How do we actually fix this? How do we take trips that truly recharge us without the financial hangover? Well, to escape this trap, you have to budget for the entire life cycle of the trip across 3 distinct phases. You can't just budget for the before, the flights and the hotel. You need cash for the during, the meals, the taxis, the fun, but absolutely crucially, you must budget for the after. You need a dedicated cash cushion for the groceries and the recovery week when you return, so you don't drop your bags in the hallway and immediately feel that wave of financial panic setting in. The real luxury isn't the 5-star hotel room. The real luxury is coming home without a hangover of debt. And to keep yourself perfectly grounded, you can use what's called the 5-3-10 rule. It's brilliant. First up, the 5. Cap your total annual travel at 5% of your gross income. If you make $80,000 a year, your cap is $4,000. Period. Second, the 3. If you can't pay the trip off entirely in cash within 3 months of booking it, you can't afford it yet. And finally, the rule of 10. Multiply that sticker price by 10 before you ever book. You aren't just deciding if a trip is worth $5,000, you're deciding if it's worth $50,000 of your future wealth. By rigidly applying this specific framework, you strip all that emotional cover away and treat travel like the major, serious financial decision it actually is. Which really brings us to a slightly uncomfortable but absolutely crucial final question you should ask yourself before you ever hit that book button again. Would you still want this trip if you couldn't post a single photo of it? It really forces you to be brutally honest with yourself. Are you buying rest? Or are you just buying applause? Because applause is quite literally one of the most expensive things you can ever finance. Separating the actual real-life experience from the social media performance gives you your power back. It leaves you with the ultimate freedom to take vacations that actually bring you lasting peace, paid for in cash with the people you love. So what's the most you've ever regretted spending on a trip? Really think about it. And hey, thanks so much for joining us on this explainer.